Have you ever wondered why a trip to Europe suddenly feels a lot more expensive, or why American goods seem like a bargain overseas? A big part of that comes down to currency values, and sometimes governments intentionally change those values. Today, we're diving into the world of currency valuation, specifically looking at devaluation versus revaluation. It sounds complicated, but we'll break it down in a way that's easy to understand and explain why it matters to you, even here in the US. So, what exactly is currency valuation? Simply put, it's the process of determining the value of one country's currency in relation to another. This is usually done through a floating exchange rate system, meaning the value is determined by supply and demand in the foreign exchange market. But sometimes, governments step in and actively change the value. That's where devaluation and revaluation come in. Let's start with devaluation. Devaluation is when a country lowers the value of its currency relative to other currencies. Think of it like a sale. If a product goes on sale, it becomes cheaper, right? It's similar with devaluation. Let's say the fictional country of Economica previously had an exchange rate of one Economican dollar equaling $1. If Economica devalues its currency, that rate might change to 1.2 Economican dollars equaling $1. Why would a country do this? The main reason is to boost exports. When a currency is devalued, goods and services from that country become cheaper for foreign buyers. Imagine you're buying a widget from Economica before devaluation. It cost $10. After devaluation, that same widget now costs $8.33 because 1.2 Economican dollars equals $1. Suddenly, Economican widgets look a lot more attractive to buyers in the US, and demand increases. Devaluation can also help reduce a country's trade deficit. That's when a country imports more than it exports. By making exports cheaper and imports more expensive, devaluation aims to level the playing field. It can also stimulate domestic production, as consumers might opt for locally made goods instead of pricier imports. But devaluation isn't without its drawbacks. It makes imports more expensive for consumers in the devaluing country. That means things like oil, food, and electronics might cost more. It can also lead to inflation, as the increased cost of imports gets passed on to consumers. And it can erode investor confidence if the devaluation is seen as a sign of economic weakness. Now, let's flip the script and talk about revaluation. Revaluation is essentially the opposite of devaluation. It's when a country increases the value of its currency relative to other currencies. Using our example of Economica, if the exchange rate was 1.2 Economican dollars to $1, revaluation might change it to 0.8 Economican dollars equaling $1. Why would a country revalue its currency? Generally, it's done to control inflation. When a currency is strong, imports become cheaper, helping to keep prices down. It can also signal economic strength and attract foreign investment. A strong currency can boost a country's purchasing power and make its citizens wealthier when traveling or buying goods from abroad. However, revaluation can hurt exports. Suddenly, goods from the revaluing country become more expensive for foreign buyers, potentially reducing demand. This can lead to a trade surplus, when a country exports more than it imports, which, while seemingly positive, can sometimes create imbalances in the global economy. The US dollar, for a long time, has generally not been subject to deliberate devaluation or revaluation in the same way some other countries are. The US largely operates under a floating exchange rate system, and the value of the dollar fluctuates based on market forces. However, the US Treasury Department can intervene in the foreign exchange market, although it rarely does so directly to change the dollar's value. More often, interventions focus on smoothing out excessive volatility. Now, let's consider a quick real-world example. China, for many years, maintained a relatively fixed exchange rate between its currency, the yuan, and the US dollar. While not a full devaluation or revaluation, they periodically adjusted the rate to remain competitive in international trade. This illustrates how currency valuation can be used as a tool to influence a country's economic performance. Another case. In 2015, Switzerland abandoned its cap on the Swiss franc against the euro, effectively allowing the franc to appreciate significantly. This was a form of revaluation, intended to combat inflation and maintain economic stability. However, it had a negative impact on Swiss exports, as their goods became more expensive for Eurozone buyers. So to recap, devaluation lowers a currency's value to boost exports and address trade deficits, but can lead to higher import costs and inflation. Revaluation increases a currency's value to control inflation and signal economic strength, but can hurt exports. Both are powerful tools governments can use to influence their economies, but they come with trade-offs. Understanding these concepts can help you better interpret global economic events and their impact on your own financial well-being. Remember, this information is for educational purposes only and should not be taken as financial advice. Always consult with a qualified financial professional before making investment decisions.